This presentation examines two atypical cases of public art converted to digital art, both affected by the first year of COVID-19. The first was an artistic digital light show broadcast online and live that mixed surreal 3D visualizations with recorded site footage to mimic a physical event in the US. Many viewers, however, didn't quite understand this hybrid process and ended up interpreting it as a physical event. The second artwork, entitled Savage Beauty, was also a light show. However, in this case, the piece had been physically installed, but ultimately only viewed and distributed online, presented as a digital edition. What can we learn by comparing these two similar but at the same time opposing and unlikely events? From a CGI visualization and a physical installation of public artistic events that were both encountered by digital means. How do these events and the convergence of physical and digital properties link to perceptions of authenticity and sovereignty? This case study is a part of a broader research that examines how digital landscape and architectural visualizations may affect people's perceptions of sites and spaces, and focus on studying the social, aesthetic, and political implications that may derive from such. In 2021, a video of a surreal light and fireworks show at Seattle's Space Needle Tower went viral. The roughly 10-minute spectacle depicted the monument wrapped around holograms, light animations, and fireworks that resembled a science fiction piece. The video was a digital visualization that mixed CGI with real footage of the existing site. In a creative effort to salvage the annual fireworks show, which was now inaccessible because of COVID-19 restrictions, the organizers of the event hired a team of creative technologists to produce a virtual light show experience to be streamed entirely online. In many ways, the digital show was given the same credibility and publicity as its prior physical installments, and it was also given a decent budget. Although there were attempts by the event organizers to describe the digital contents of the production, in the end, many viewers were left confused and believed the effects they viewed were actually happening in real life. The sci-fi fireworks spectacle was disseminated on social media by many viewers who, with much enthusiasm, believed this was a physical occurrence. The event soon gained traction abroad, but without the proper context. In a post by Blog2, a Toronto-based media company with over 700,000 followers on social media, the Space Needle event was used as a means to demand reform and denounce Toronto's own lack of investment in public infrastructure. The article, entitled Seattle's Space Needle Puts CN Tower to Shame After New Year's Eve Light Show, cited several posts from local citizens that compared the digital Space Needle footage with Toronto's similar but physical event, which looked lackluster in contrast. One of the quoted citizens posted on Twitter a clip of the digital event alongside their remarks, "Hey, Toronto, the CN Tower's got to step it up." Thus, the artistic visualization was quickly shaped into a political tool. The digital footage reached people in other countries without context, and soon enough it was interpreted as the grass is greener on the other side situation, aggravating their dismay towards their public surroundings. While this case did not escalate to more than civic criticism and fault-finding, it illustrates how the portrayal of realistic visualizations of sites, even with benign intentions, may spin out of control. Earlier that year, Finnish light artist Kari Kola was installing his latest artwork in Ireland, commissioned for the Galway 2020 European Capital of Culture. Entitled Savage Beauty, it was promoted as the largest site-specific light work ever created. The proposal consisted of 1,000 lights scattered around 5 kilometers of a mountain in Connemara. Visually, the light effects and display of color were similar to a phenomenon such as the Northern Lights. Nonetheless, the essence of the artwork was not only visual. As highlighted on the event's website, the visitors were invited to absorb Savage Beauty at their own pace with a walk into nature, inviting visitors to engage with the landscape and environment through this sculptural experience. However, the artwork was being installed precisely during the surge of COVID-19 in Europe in early March. Shortly before the event in mid-March, when practically everything was installed and ready for the public, new restrictive measures were implemented, leading to the cancellation of the event. With the impossibility of visitation, the organizers opted to convert the physical experience into what they call the digital edition, an online art experience. The digital edition consisted of the short 2-minute, the clip we saw just now, that featured mostly aerial footage of the illuminated mountain. In the end, the artists and the event director publicly expressed their disappointment for the event's cancellation, but also expressed joy for the opportunity to release this special digital edition. Unlike the Space Needle, in which its public was thrilled with the utopian images of a technological future, here the public expressed on social media sadness that the event was cancelled and that they never got a chance to see it in real life. Deirdre Falvey, reporting for the Irish Times, acknowledged the dilemma at hand and shrewdly posed the question: if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And she continues, in this case, if the elimination of a whole Connemara mountain goes ahead anyway, even if audiences cannot see it because of coronavirus pandemic, has it actually happened? Other reports, however, point out that the work was never officially on display. According to the Daily Mail, the artwork was dismantled before its intended launch and was only actually seen in a tech roam and when it was to be videoed. In other words, even if one were to break the restrictive measures and go there, the only moment they would have seen the work was when it was being recorded. The two digitized projects are less than a year apart. However, the time difference between them heavily affected their development and outcome. In Savage Beauty, the news of the pandemic broke out during the late stage of production, and they had to adapt the project to digital media at the very last minute. The Space Needle, on the other hand, had already received news of the pandemic before they even started production. For this reason, the latter was able to conceive a digital-born project, and they decided to embrace digital media elements in their production. Despite this key difference, both projects produced bewildering results. Viewers couldn't make sense of really how to interpret and define what they were seeing or not seeing through the screens of their homes. The distance between physical and digital, or even fact or fiction, became blurry and intertwined in these converted works. Should these events be perceived as real instances? Did they occur? Looking at it through the lens of Baudrillard, the argument could be made that they fall into the category of simulation. Rodrigues notes how Baudrillard denotes simulacrum, the entity produced by simulation, as the substitution of the real by its signs. Furthermore, Butler underscores how this concept is both the loss of reality and its very possibility. In this view, he notes, the aim of simulation is not to do away with reality, but on the contrary, to realize it, to make it real. What occurred in the Space Needle corroborates these aims. The imagery depicted, the choreography of animations and sequences, and its mise en scène all perform as digital surrogates of their physical counterparts. They appropriate the elements that spectators have come to identify and expect, experimenting with signs and tropes gathered from a history of televised events. The actors involved, too, play their part in this appropriation. This is evident in a particular video in which a news reporter hypes the event hours earlier. In the video, a local journalist, filled with excitement, reports live with the physical Space Needle in the background, as if the event were to happen physically there soon enough. In other words, not only was the digital image referencing the physical site, but the reverse also became true. The physical site was used to allude to its digital upcoming event. This uncanny performance evidences the lack of clear distinction between how one should interpret the Space Needle's physical and digital image. The aims of simulation also relate to what occurred with Savage Beauty. Although there is a tendency to view simulation as explicitly dealing with computer models and virtual reality, Selinger notes that it is not limited as such, and it can also be applied to more abstract concepts related to perceptions, such as status symbol commodities and media fabrications. Savage Beauty's digital edition, at first glance, speciously appears as simply a video recording of an artwork. However, although the depicted elements in the footage were physically installed, the event did not take place de facto. The footage depicted is a stage performance, specifically shot for the produced video and then dismantled. This subtle difference is essential in separating the digital edition from the physical edition, which was never truly realized. This difference also illustrates how our understanding of temporality seems to be lost in the virtual works. While the digital space Needle was broadcast like a live event, the precise timeline or duration of the digital Savage Beauty is unknown. Prescient of the complex role of mediation and perception, Rem Koolhaas stated in 1991 that, with television and the media and a whole series of other inventions, you could say that the public domain is lost. But you could also say that it's now so pervasive, it does not need physical articulation anymore. I think the truth is somewhere in between, end of quote. Art critic Claire Bishop also acknowledged that today, spectatorship takes place on several levels and underscored the role of intermediary digital technologies in enabling a contiguity between physical and virtual spectatorship. Bishop shrewdly linked the rise of interest in physical performances in galleries to how viewers were both physically and digitally present through their phones, for example, when experiencing them, and how these perceptions were intertwined. When we look at both artworks, we see that there is a complex overlap between our physical and virtual experiencing of them. Even upon the analysis of the events and their aftermath, it is difficult to entangle their ambiguities. Physical and digital are much more than the difference between something tangible and intangible, troubling our views or even our appreciation for physical representations. Cultural geographers Cosgrove and Daniels argued that the conception of landscape was a view over land rather than a tract of land, a symbolic representation that is no more real than a landscape painting or a poem. Sherry Turkle shared an anecdote of her daughter at the zoo which resembles this. The turtle rests in its cage, utterly still. They could have used a robot, comments my daughter. She considers it a shame to bring the turtle all this way and put it in a cage for a performance that draws so little on the turtle's aliveness when you could have used a robot. The extraordinary cases shown here and their aftermath are examples of some of these concepts in practice. COVID-19 was laden with unprecedented experimentations that shook our perceptions. This was especially conspicuous in the arts. Now that we have a proper distance from them, we can finally investigate such events and their findings, and maybe adjust ourselves to our imaging technologies. Thank you.